what made you come to the idea that changing the dimensions or changing the design of a pillow would be a business you wanted to go for?
Yeah, so it kind of was, I was running creatively. I'd started creatively in 2017, which is our marketing agency. Um, and while I was running that, I just kind of kept coming back to this idea I'd had for a while, which was I always loved taking naps on a couch that kind of had like a flat, higher armrest, kind of like an IKEA couch. And I just always was like, man, it's like I like sleeping there more, almost more than my bed. Um, and I'd had a friend growing up whose mom was Japanese, and had kind of told me about Asian pillows and how, Asian pillows are different shapes. And, I'd come across in Korea, they have a buckwheat pillow that's cube shaped. It's very firm, but I liked the shape. And so, as Creatively was launching and helping our clients to grow, I kept coming back to like, man, we got to start our own brand. I think it'd be really fun. I think it'd help us learn more about what our clients are going through. And so I kept trying to think of what would be a good idea. And then someone sent me some samples of foam that were 12 by 12 by 3 inches. And I put those two samples of foam together and laid down on a couch and was like, oh, this is kind of like the IKEA couch armrest. Like, this is awesome. Um, and so I spray glued together those two pieces of foam and hired a seamstress to make me a cover. And I just kind of like started taking that with me and being like, hey, what do you think of this pillow? And people thought it was really weird looking, but then once they tried it, they're like, man, that is fantastic. So that's kind of where the idea came from. And it was something that I think, a lot of times once you show someone the idea more than tell someone the idea, when I would show people the idea and let them try it, those people would call me back and be like, dude, you gotta launch this as a company. And that to me, I think is kind of test number one. Like, when
Yeah.
you show people the product, do they say, man, that's really great? So that was kind of how the idea came about.
Would you consider Pillow Cube a disruptor product?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was very different. We did a bunch of things. Like, one of the things that we did differently that now tons of people have copied us on is making different thicknesses of pillows. That wasn't like really a thing at the time.
Mm.
There weren't people out there selling different thicknesses of pillows, and so we did it, and then immediately a bunch of people in the market copied us, and uh, so I think that that's usually a pretty good sign that you're disrupting, is that you're doing something new and unique. But yeah, it was just kind of this new way of making pillows that, especially here in the US, people hadn't seen before. So,
Yeah, and I'll preface this next question by saying I know there's not a lot of universal tactics or strategies when it comes to marketing that work for all businesses, right? Businesses are different; they have different audiences, different product focus. When we've worked with as an agency, when we've worked with disruptive products in the past, either in the sustainability space or just in home goods space, we've noticed from a marketing messaging angle, having copy or having ads or creative top of funnel that is very provocative, and then having creative that educates and normalizes the product in retargeting has been very effective. Have
yeah.
there been any messaging strategies or just creative strategies that you have really leaned into? Have you done this? I mean, I look at the website and some of your creatives, and I would say there's an element of provocation with the creative. Is that fair to say?
No, totally. I think that that's something that we've definitely leveraged is, at the time when we started work on this, I kind of viewed side sleeping as this kind of like niche group. We're the forgotten audience that none of the big manufacturers or brands cared about, and they always make stuff that's like, it's okay for side sleepers, but really it's like good for everyone. Um, or every once in a while they're like, hey, this works for everyone, but it's kind of leaning a little more towards side sleeping. And so I just felt like no one really cared about just side sleepers. So that was something that like we kind of leveraged, and our ads would be like, Big Pillow doesn't care about you. You're this forgotten audience. You're a forgotten niche. The irony was we found out later that most people are side sleepers, in America,
Mm,
70 plus percent. But it really helped us to get people to feel that way of like, no one cares about you like we do. Um, and so yeah, it was really kind of key to our success, and then educating people and helping people understand kind of why we're different and how it works. We always try and focus in our content and our campaigns for clients on demonstrability. Don't tell people that you're better, show people that you're better, and show them why you're better. And so I think that's something a lot of times people struggle with. I remember Quip did this great ad where they took corn on the cob
mhm.
and a piece of corn on the cob, and they rolled it in coffee uh, grounds, right? That's the right word. And rolled it in there, and then they would use like a standard toothbrush and try and brush it, and then they used like the Quip toothbrush, and that was just such an effective ad of like, hey, these little pieces of coffee represent your teeth, or
Mhm.
or represent plaque and food, and the corn's like your teeth, and it's a similar shape, and look how much better this toothbrush is at getting that stuff out of the space between your teeth. And so I think that that's something that's really important as a marketer, is like constantly asking, are we demonstrating, or are we just telling? Like, are we just like, oh, we're better? It's like, are you demonstrating you're better? So
And how did you go about doing that for comfort? Is it fair to ask that comfort was the thing you would need to demonstrate for a pillow cube?
yeah, so I think the thing for us that we demonstrated is every side sleeper, when you talk to them, they feel this pain because they're either doing this to
Mhm.
to kind of give themselves to be on that kind of right level, or they're dropping their shoulder in. And so when I talk to side sleepers, I'm like, you can feel that pain because you're not sleeping like this. You're not sleeping straight on, and with your shoulder extended and feeling comfortable. And so for that reason, like that's why your neck hurts, your chest hurts. And so we would show people like ergonomically, here's what it looks like when you're sleeping on someone else's pillow, and here's what it looks like when you're sleeping on ours. And that equates, I think, in customers' mind to comfort and why we're better. So
And relate kind of educating them, but also just relating the problem to a solution that they weren't necessarily
yeah,
aware of. Because, I mean, with pillows, I think everybody has just accepted you get what you get. Like you can get one
yeah,
that's firm or not firm, but
yeah.
pillows is you get what you get. Um, Interesting. So I know education can be a costly marketing strategy. Like it can, getting people up to speed on why they need your product. Um, Besides that, or we could talk about that. What were some of the biggest hurdles that you faced when you initially went to market?
Yeah, so I think probably one of the things that was hard for us, and I think this is another probably sign that we were somewhat disruptive or pretty disruptive, is that people were pretty resistant to the idea. Early on, we really got the early adopters who were like, "Yeah, this is a cool idea. I liked." Um, but then over time, it just kind of took time for that idea to sink in. Like I said, if you go to a Korean or a Japanese person, this is not like a super weird idea if they spent time in those countries. Like it's pretty accepted that pillows can look like that. Like even in Tonga and Samoa, a lot of Pacific Islanders use pillows that are more unique shapes. But for Americans, pillows are usually shaped like pillows. The traditional pillow of like the four corners, and then it's stuffed, and that's pillow shaped. We don't even have a word for it. It's just the shape of a pillow. And so I think that was something that was challenging for us, was we were trying to convince people like, hey, the core shape of this thing is the reason why it's not working for you. Um, and then we also were trying to convince people of like, you really can't have a pillow that's made to work for everyone. You need to find a pillow that's made specifically for you. So that's why we have the different heights. We have new products coming out that really even accentuate that more. So So yeah.
And have you had to evolve your design at all over time based on feedback, or have you stayed pretty close to the original design structure?
No, yeah. So the original version was 12 by 12 by 6, and then different thicknesses. But like originally it was more of a square, and then we realized like most people wanted something they could roll from side to side uh,
Mm-hmm.
on, and so we made a wider version that stayed pretty standard. And then yeah, we've continued to update and launch new versions, versions of the original pillow had probably been more material changes, like changing the type of foam we use, the additives we put in the foam, the type of fabrics we use. So yeah, we definitely feel like there's this constant need to iterate and improve and just make things better. And even though the general shape has stayed the same now for a while, we're always changing what's inside of it, which is another thing that I think is hard to communicate to customers. That customers look at us and maybe something similar, and they're like, oh, this one's more expensive, this one's cheaper. And it's like, well, because we're using a much better foam. We're using a foam with additives that make it cooler, make it more supportive. But that's sometimes a hard story to tell. So
Well, and I'm curious too about lifetime value, specifically for that SKU, which, the focus or that category, which focus on the pillows. Um, how often do you find people are buying new pillows? Is there a good lifetime value play with pillows?
yeah, so what we see, and I think this has been kind of an interesting thing for us, is people buy one. And then usually someone in the family, like sometimes the main person who bought it for themselves might be like, I didn't end up liking it, or, I maybe realized I sleep more on my back than I thought I did. And they're like, yeah, but my kid took it, and they love it. And so what we see, or the more common scenario is the person who bought it loves it, and then their spouse steals it. So they buy themselves one, and then their kid steals it, and then their wife is the one that they got, and so they get another one. So we see that a lot, where people come back and they buy more and more pillows. So
What, then the question I wanted to lead to with that was, I see you've done expansion because you originally started with the pillow, right? Now you have mattresses, now you have knee pillows. Was that expansion always in plan, or was that kind of a learned thing as you went throughout the process?
it's definitely a learned thing. My I definitely kind of approach it where I don't think I don't think that founders should sit in a room and determine what people want. I think they should talk to customers and then determine what the customer is needing. I think it's kind of a middle ground. You kind of have the one side, which is like just have your customer tell you what they want and then design it and make it for them. And then there's the opposite side, which is I think can be very common in startups where they don't really talk to their customers and they just sit in a group, in a conference room and say like, this is what I think our customers want. And then but what it really often is this is what I want. And so you can create products that the founder loves, and maybe the team loves, but customers don't. So
Hmm.
we try and follow more of an approach of like, Apple or IDEO or, any company that does a killer job of like talk to customers, find out, what they're doing, what they're using it for, how they're using it, uh, stay really close to customers. But then as they describe the challenges they're having, the pains they're having, it's your job as a product development group to develop the solution to their problems.
Hmm.
Customers don't usually understand materials and costs and shipping and freight and design limitations, and so that's not their job. But what we ask them to do is just tell us their pains and their frustrations and the things they're struggling with, and then we'll go figure out a solution. And then you go back to the customer and test it and see if they love it, and if they don't, you keep working.
Well,
So
I know I said earlier there's very few things that are universal for businesses, but I've talked to many people on this podcast, and that is one thing that is universal is relying on talking to your customer to understand product development, to understand marketing messaging. There's different tools, post-purchase surveys like no commerce, picking up the phone and actually just calling people.
yeah.
Do you have any one specific way that you go about or prefer to go for?
Yeah, so we call customers, we talk to customers through surveys, through emails, post purchase. So yeah, I think it's always like you want to not annoy people, but it's also amazing to me how often uh, people love sharing that. And so anytime I meet someone who's bought the pillow, just kind of out and about, and I often do. My first question is like, "What's the thing that you wish we would change?" And then my next question is like, "What are the things you love about it?" Because I think that opens them up of like, "Hey, we recognize we're not perfect. We're trying to constantly improve and get better." And that's something that I think is it kind of opens the door for them to be like, "Oh, here are some of the things that I didn't like, but then here are some of the things I did like." So I also sometimes will just say, "Do you still sleep on it?" And that kind of tells you, like, oh, "I bought it 6 months ago." It's like, "Do you still sleep on it?" Like, no. Oh, interesting. Okay, why'd you stop? And you get a lot of interesting information. So
from them. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that customer feedback is like you're saying, what partially led to expanding out your SKUs, focusing on things like mattresses. Mattresses are a higher ticket item. I mean, there's things you can pay for; they're more expensive online, right? But mattresses are, I believe, your price range is what is it? Top it would be $12.99. I think I saw on your website.
so our kind of lower end model is anywhere from I think 900 to 1400.
Okay.
And then our higher end model is like two to 3500. So
Okay. And what's that, just from a high ticket perspective or higher ticket perspective compared to the pillow, what's that sales journey been like? I imagine when you first rolled it out, there was opportunity to, capture existing customers that way. But for net new these days, do you find people go straight for the mattress? Do you have a strategy where you work people through maybe getting a pillow and then lead them into making that purchase?
yeah, that's been one of the best ways that we've done it is we use kind of the pillows as a lead source, and then we have a flow that essentially takes them from buying a pillow to like, "Hey, have you ever seen our mattress, considered our mattress?" And then if they're interested, we set up a call with one of our sales team so that they can kind of walk them through because it's a much bigger purchase. It's also why we're not shifting into becoming like a mattress company first. We're still a pillow company first. But there were so many people who loved the pillow, and were like, "I wish you guys would make, you know, X. Like, I wish you guys made a knee pillow. I wish you guys made a mattress. I wish you made some of these other things." And so after that happened, we were like, "Yeah, like let's solve that pain for our customers." So
And from the outside perspective, mattresses got very competitive in D2C for a while. I mean, there was multiple companies that really popped up and were pushing marketing a lot for that.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's you know, for us, there's some really crucial things of like we focus a lot on the pillow and how we can improve things because I believe that for most people, the first thing you should figure out and kind of solve is your pillow. It's much easier. It's much more affordable. If you're not sleeping great, buying a new mattress is a pretty big commitment. And so we try and start people with like, hey, if you're not sleeping great from like an ergonomic standpoint, get a better pillow first. That's probably like
Mhm.
step one. Um, and that's really like our mission is there's so many people it blows me away who are like they'll spend money on clothes and shoes and all these things, even things a mattress, but then they sleep on just a bag of fluff and it's like that's just not going to be a great experience for you. So trying
Yeah.
to get people to make that change. So yeah.
Well, I love it. And I know we talked about right before we came on air, just you are currently um, have three companies you're working on right now, right? So you have Creatively, you have the Pillow Cube, and you also have a newer business, Cold Case Ice Cream.
Yeah.
What led you into the CPG or just the frozen goods space?
Yeah. So Really, it was again just an idea that I'd had that I was looking for something to do with kind of friends and family, and
Hmm.
had seen kind of this surge in businesses that kind of offered this high-end experience. And so I had a friend who's, I think, like the best ice cream maker in the country. Like me and my wife love to travel and we love ice cream. And so we'd go places and, go to New York and go to Chicago, and they have great food and terrible ice cream. New York has the crappiest ice cream of any city in the country. Um, and it's wild because their food is so amazing, but like so many ice cream places out there are just like, this is horrible. Um, so we started thinking. I was talking to this friend. He owns an ice cream shop here in Utah, and I was like, dude, your ice cream's so good. Let's create kind of this high end experience where you get ice cream, but then you also get kind of games and this kind of like file folder, and it's all true crime podcast themed, and it's mysteries, and then just like these amazing flavors that he's put together. So yeah, it's been a really fun learning experience, and it's been cool to see it just kind of go nuts. And that was another one where I like put together kind of some samples, and we printed off like, here's what we think the packaging and the box would look like, and started showing it to friends and family and having them come over and kind of run through it. And those people would then text me and be like, dude, you've got to do that. And so I think that's always a good sign. I think for every entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur, the biggest emotion you have to overcome is this like fear of telling people your idea.
Mm.
um, if you don't get over that, it's going to be a really rough journey being an entrepreneur. So
Do you think that's deeper with fear of believing in your own idea or fear of rejection?
I think it's mostly a fear of rejection. I
Rejection.
think that's honestly why I think having multiple businesses is easier for me personally, because it's like, I don't care. Like, here's another idea. Tell me what you think. And I
Hmm.
try things all the time that don't work. And it's more that action, taking action to be like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. Elon Musk has this great kind of story that he tells where he says that most entrepreneurs or most business people, when they're thinking of going into a new industry, a new category, they don't buy everything that's available, and instead they're like, everyone doing this sucks. And he's like, I do the opposite. Like, when I'm thinking of going into anything, I try and go test everything that's out there to see what they're doing well, what they're doing poorly, so that I understand it. And I think that that's something that as an entrepreneur, it's like easy to get into, whatever you're doing, being like, everything's horrible, and it's like, well, have you really tried it? Are you a fan? Have you tried all these other things and seen the problems? And if not, you can kind of get into you can spend years and years and years and then kind of realize, like, actually, we're not that much better than all these things out there. We just kind of
Fixing,
assumed.
yeah, fixing a non-existent problem in
Yes.
the market.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And how do you go about balancing or deciding balancing time between multiple companies that you're running?
Yeah, so a lot of that is I really don't run them all. I'm really running Pillow Cube, and I have
Gotcha.
actually more businesses that we have a toy company
Okay.
as well, and then we also
The
have a financial services company.
stair slide, I saw that on
Yeah,
LinkedIn. I didn't see the financial service company.
yeah. So the financial services company is called FinOps Advisors, and we do really like e-com financials for our clients. And so a lot of like that business just came about because we were working with a lot of different people for Pillow Cube and saying like, hey, help us with bookkeeping and financials and CFO work. And everyone we tried just didn't really understand the ecom world,
Hmm.
um, from the brand owner side, and so we built something out. But yeah, like I think a big part of that is for me personally, so that I don't get divorced and I have a life outside of work. I don't run everything, and I try and really define like the difference between being an owner, being a owner operator, and being an operator. And so for some of those,
Gotcha.
I'm owner, or kind of the vision for the business, but I'm not necessarily the day to day operator. So
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. And I know one of the first questions I asked was about hurdles that you faced when you went to market with PillowCube. Looking ahead at 2020, the rest of 2023, and then 2024, what are some hurdles or some opportunities that you're looking at right now for marketing?
yeah, so I think it's a good question. Probably the hurdles I think is I think one of the hurdles is so many people are trying to convince you that like, hey, use this, and so I'm
Like
trying to go back to basics.
like B2B influencership? Is that what you're saying? Like using certain tools and stuff?
Yeah, everything. I think that definitely with this like explosion in ecom, we got to this point where the people making the most money were people selling tools to the e-commerce brands.
Hmm.
And it was just everyone like, oh, this will revolutionize your business and this will totally change everything. Um, and so I think one of the things that's a real hurdle. Like people kind of get stuck in that, and all of a sudden your business is doing well, and it's very flattering to have all these people chasing you, and oh, we'd love to work with you, and so I think that that's a hurdle, and so I'm trying to go back to like core principles and also talking to other brand owners of like, hey, what is having kind of an outsized impact for you? And so for me, I go back to like creative, ad buying, website experience, uh, shipping. It's kind of those core things, but I think we're trying to like really find a great partner and then work with that partner rather than like jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing. I think that us and a lot of other brands got stuck in that like grass is always greener mentality of like getting a 3PL and then immediately meeting someone who's like, we're so much better. And then you're like, oh, now let's use this 3PL. Now let's use
Move
this
it all
3PL.
there.
It's a,
Yeah.
yeah. So finding great partners and then just really working with them on the relationship and core business fundamentals, communication, processes, that kind of stuff. I think opportunities. I definitely think this is kind of always the case, but I definitely think in the next year it's going to be, you know, convincing customers that they should spend their money on your solution. And so I think that we're seeing a shift in a lot of things where a lot of people just feel kind of that um, they kind of feel that like crunching of economy and other things, and so it's putting kind of a cash crunch, and you got to be really good at convincing people like this is the thing that you need, and this is how it'll help your life, and then you got to make sure you have a great product so that it actually backs it up. So I think that those are some of the challenges. I think also like some of the opportunities are, people I think feel very overwhelmed right now in the world's history. I think people feel very unsettled. That's a
Mm.
thing I hear from investors, customers, and so trying to find ways to help people feel settled and help the world uh, to do that. And I think that brands can really be a positive influence. So we try and figure out ways that we can help and have an impact and do what we can to give back. So,
I was at a conference recently, and cost optimization for 2024 was a recurring thing that
oh
people
yeah,
kept talking about there. So, at the end of every episode, we go through three rapid fire questions. I did not send them to you ahead of time. So, we're going to go
no
off the cuff
worries.
here.
Love
So,
it.
first question for you. If you had to summarize everything we talked about today into a marketing mindset, what mindset should marketers or business owners have?
Yeah, I think probably my answer would be, um, oh man, that's such a great question. I'd probably say probably the thing I go back to the most is like I think innovating and staying close to customers is always going to be able to carry you through most problems. And so that's something I try and stay close to is, and as we talk with different people is like, look, it's kind of our focus is always continuing to improve and optimize and get better and create new solutions to people's real problems. And so I think if you can have one mindset, it's that: talk to your customers, call them on the phone, ask them how they feel. Don't shy away from the hard news of, sometimes you're disappointing people or sometimes you're not living up to expectations, and then go fix it. So
I love it. And for anyone that is listening that's at the stage of figuring out what they'd like to do in their career or to start their career, what marketing role or roles do you think will have the highest demand opportunity in the next 3 to 5 years?
that's a great question. So I definitely feel like creative and creative work is just a massive opportunity. I think there's going to be some really interesting changes with AI coming to ad buying, and I still think ad buying is a great thing.
Hmm.
But I definitely think look for roles and jobs where you're innovating and coming up with new ideas, because that's not what AI is great at. AI is great at taking ideas and then repurposing them. I've been playing around with the Chat GPT builder,
Hmm.
where you can build your own GPT, and it's like it can't come up with great ideas, but it can take my ideas and pretend like it's me, and then
Hmm.
help other people to understand my ideas.
Hmm.
So being an innovator and a creator, I think, is always the safest job to have. So
Perfect. And last question for you. Where can listeners connect with you and learn more about your businesses?
yeah, so probably one of the best places is LinkedIn, especially if it's business related. All my other socials pretty personal, like family stuff. So I'm not as uh, good at responding when it's when it's business related, and so LinkedIn is probably the best place. And then you can visit any of our websites. But yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. I love talking to people. Sometimes it takes me a minute to get back, but I try and be as responsive as possible, and love meeting new people. So
Well, Jay, this was a good episode. I appreciate you coming on today.
yeah, thanks for having me. I always love it.